With it now being July, we're another calendar month closer to whatever COD's got next up on deck, that being rumored to be Modern Warfare 3. Now, we've already discussed what this looks to entail for the upcoming year, but today, I want to just casually discuss the lack of, for I guess better term, the big mess that Modern Warfare 3 has to clean up, and frankly, while it's easy in theory, I think we'll have to see just how much of it can actually be acted upon. As we go along, drop your thoughts down below. What are you hoping to see in Modern Warfare 3? Like, what turns it around for you, or what would get you interested in it? Drop your thoughts below, and if you enjoy the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay updated with all things Modern Warfare 2, 3, X-Defiant, and even more FPS content, and maybe some other projects along the way. I'd love to have you in the community if you'd like to join. But finally, check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage. We just launched the new limited run of the Espresso bundle, the first product collaboration of mine here, so excited to share that with you guys, but more on that a little bit later. For now, let's jump into it. So I don't think that it's really been any sort of wild take to say that this year's game has been fundamentally polarizing, removing core elements of the gameplay loop that have been consistent for years, doubling down on core changes made in 2019. It's been a hit for some people, but a miss for a lot of people too. So how does that change? First, I want to run down some what I think should be gameplay adjustments that I think need to be addressed and acted upon. So feel free to add from your list if there's something here that we don't quite get around to touching on. The first thing I want to talk about isn't necessarily the most important. A lot of the stuff here is probably going to be out of order in terms of importance, but just kind of throwing it at the wall here. Perks is one thing that I want to touch on firstly. Fundamentally, for perks, I don't really care if that stays. I'm kind of okay with it. The branding of the bonus and ultimate perks, couldn't care less about that. But some of the perk balancing in terms of those categories are decent in my book. Like Quick Fix is something that is incredibly valuable, but so is Ghost. But you can't have both of those. But what I do think is totally useless, as indicated in the Warzone gameplay, as indicated in competitive play, the perk timers and rollouts that we have for regular core MP. Just insanely useless in my opinion. Perhaps, yes, it was built to incentivize play, to get your perks quicker, that if you play objectively, you play for aggressive, kill-hungry gameplay. We've talked about this before, where each of those things ends up having modifiers that grants time off of those earned perk charge rates, but it's just a flat-out dumb thing to me to limit players and their playstyles because you want to cut things out of the core gameplay loop that never needed to be cut out of the core gameplay loop. As we'll touch on with a couple of things here, this is essentially just changing something for the sake of changing. Nobody really had any issues, at least that I saw, with the standard 3 or maybe at this point 4 perk system that you could end up using. But instead, we changed it for what reason? I personally don't see any. So for that, I'd love for the perk system to return back to any sense of normalcy with this. Next, Dead Silence. Listen, I don't really care what camp you're in on this one. Dead Silence as a perk is my preferred, whether you want it to be or you don't. I get that it's not quite possible if you're going to be building things for Warzone. We talked about this before, where like if Dead Silence was a perk in Warzone, it would completely break everything. So I get that for maybe Modern Warfare 2019 when they first built it, maybe continuing it on here with Modern Warfare 2, I get that it's not quite possible for that because you built the two games so foundationally similar when they didn't necessarily need to be. But with Sledgehammer not changing much of the core Warzone mechanics and not working off of that base application, though I'd love to see them alter some of the base mechanics of Warzone, but that's just not how it's going to work. They're going to be working and building their own application, their own EXE for Modern Warfare 3. They definitely have options for what they can do for their title. I've said it before, and it's kind of a preface to a handful of these upcoming mentions, that they can fix it. Sledge has in the past attempted more than others to make games with features that the community wants, i.e. the Division overhaul whenever that came in World War II, i.e. Master Prestige rewards in Advanced Warfare, i.e. the scrapped rewards and features that were planned for World War II, stuff that to this day I still don't think that I can legally talk about, but then also things like adding Ninja as a perk to counter Dead Silence, where both existed simultaneously but wasn't necessary. They added that in as a sort of compromise between Modern Warfare 2019 and the traditional systems with it. So I think if there's a studio to say, screw it, let's do it, it'd probably be them. I mean, realistically speaking, Sledge has always been kind of that middle of the road studio, where if you look at any Call of Duty game, even going back to the classics, maybe more defined in the classics, you'd always see that split of, okay, are you a Modern Warfare or are you a Black Ops type fan? Whereas Sledgehammer hasn't really ever had that sort of identity associated with it, so they can try and thread the needle and make these games that the community wants. But anyways, kind of getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but with them doing things with Dead Silence, i.e. Ninja, as recently as Vanguard, I see absolutely no reason why we can't see that happening again, at the very least introducing a ninja perk, or perhaps a straight up dead silence. Next, I'm gonna talk about red dots on the minimap. Personally, I'll never understand why this was taken out. It doesn't seem to do any harm, but for me, from my perspective, it incentivizes movement and engagement with the maps, giving crucial information as to where you want to chase down and go for the action, or oppositely, if you are a passive player, you can use that to end up staying out of sight, out of mind. And to me, no red dots mixed with the audio, the way that it works in Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 2019, I know it's not the only factors, but I do feel like it slows the game down tremendously because people are afraid of having their footsteps heard, because players are afraid of other factors like that. They're not going to just run around and try and play a very aggressive game. Personally, combining that with something like a dead silence to counteract that, I think it brings back some of that arcade element and pace of what we've seen in COD in the past. So to me, at the very least, add it like a perk with you did with Vanguard, where you have that radar perk, but then ultimately, I'd just love to see it added in regardless. Next, I think we definitely need to see some movement changes. Not talking going all the way back to fully slide canceling. Honestly, I really don't care about slide canceling. I don't care if it's there. I don't care if it's not. I'll play the game and interact with the gameplay mechanics, whatever the case may be. I utilize slide canceling in Modern Warfare 2019 and in Warzone. I don't use it, obviously, because it's not there within Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, now just Warzone. I don't care, but I'm more so talking about the just overall pace of your soldier, your ADS, your sprint to fire times, things like that. It just feels like everything moves at a snail pace. I made the comment a couple of videos ago, maybe talking about Modern Warfare 3 last even, where it was an over-exaggeration where I said that Call of Duty is dumbing itself down to a milsim. Yes, I know that it's not actually a milsim, but when you take a look at a lot of these factors, it feels so much slower compared to the classic games that we all loved from way back in the day, even from recent titles as well. So I just want to get a little bit more speed in there so that it can be a bit faster paced, so that there is a little bit more twitch to it, where again, I don't care for the crackhead TikTok movement stuff, but just want to be able to ADS my gun or get into a gunfight after sprinting without it taking an entire second to get into those. Because at that point, the way the TTK is within this game, you're dead within that second. So that's just me personally. Again, you guys could feel stronger with things like slide canceling, or maybe you like the slower pace, but that's just where I am in regards to that. I want to focus more on the ADS, sprint to fire speeds, stuff like that, but also just overall, generally a little bit more speed in your soldiers' movement. Beyond that, I'd like to see some removing of gimmicky features. And this one might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'll explain why. Weapon tuning is one of these things that I kind of consider at this point, because I'm all for choice and customization of things, but with things like weapon tuning, number one, I don't think that it's really all that necessary. Like when you fine tune your attachments and everything, it doesn't make a whole world of a difference where you're going to go from average gun to melt machine. But also, number two, I think it's honestly just a scenario that pushes the casual audience you want to try and capture away. The thing that I will never forget is that last June, myself, a bunch of other content creators, a bunch of press outlets, ended up having a Zoom call with Infinity Ward before the reveal of Modern Warfare 2, where they ran down some information about the campaign, the core gameplay mechanics, the engine, all that kind of stuff, but they did actually talk a little bit about multiplayer, which was surprising because they usually don't do that kind of stuff whenever we learn about things as basic as campaign and setting and stuff. But they detailed how they wanted the game to be accessible to everyone, easy to understand and learn, and then the very next slide, or like 2 slides later, they go into talking about how weapon unlock trees are going to be how you unlock weapons and not standard levels, how you can fine-tune weapon attachments as if that's not the most in-depth and convoluted thing they've ever put into the weapon systems. Inherently, that's not a bad thing, but it's hilarious how counterintuitive it was to previously mention that they want it to be accessible to all players, but then add that insane level of complexity that doesn't really even reward those that actually understand it. Like, I would understand if it was something that actually added genuine benefit and introduced like a new skill curve with it, but to me, it's just something that is truly a minuscule comparison to a non-tuned weapon. It's just kind of gimmicky to me. Instead, honestly, I'd love to see the return of the Pick 10 system, but doubt that's going to happen. The final thing that I'm going to touch on before we jump into stuff outside of game is change the dang UI. I know it's a long shot, but my God, please let's get back to a console and PC favored UI. When you realize that Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone's UI was built for mobile, it all makes sense why this is just not good for what we have on consoles and PC. And sure, there's 100 million plus players logging in every month on mobile, but if we already have discrepancies in content, earnable items, maps that are played, why does the UI of the game have to be the same? Clearly there's differences for a reason, so why does the non-mobile platforms have to suffer through a UI built not for them? get back to something that isn't just painful to navigate and look at. Now, before we continue, I want to take a few extra seconds to talk about my friends over at Gamer Advantage. Again, you might have heard this pitch plenty of times before. Love these guys, most comfortable, lightweight, and durable frames on the market, but we just recently launched the Espresso bundle, which is a little bit different by comparison to a standard bundle you can end up getting, but it's a great way to support the channel a little further if you guys are at all interested. You'll end up getting a pair of the Inferno glasses with the little coffee mug logo we have here for the channel, etched on the frames. You'll end up getting a microfiber carry pouch and a cleaning cloth, both branded with the channel's artwork, and a polarized magnetic sun clip that makes them essentially sunglasses. So if you do have a prescription, you make these your daily drivers, you can wear them out and about as well. These are limited in stock, and I don't think we're going to be getting a restock batch or anything for quite some time, if ever. So if you guys would like to check them out, grab them while you can. And of course, use code Espresso. It'll get 10% off your entire order, but they're available. Link in the description below if you guys are at all interested. Truly, thanks so much for making this even a possibility here with the channel. Love you all to death for that. But anyways, final things I want to touch on before we wrap everything up is honestly just some stuff that are a stark contrast to this year outside of gameplay. Number one, communication. Stop just tweeting about bundles and stuff. I get you can't chronicle every single aspect of game development, or it takes away from rollout of fixes, content, and more, but for the love of God, be conscious of your community and not just the dollar signs for stuff that isn't game related. I absolutely loved that Sledge used to do community updates every single week over on their website, teasing a bit of what's upcoming, showcasing community moments through Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, and other places that clips could be shared, and all things like that. It was welcoming players to engage with the game and the community, and I do wish that we'd get back to that kind of stuff. I hope that we don't see this promise of communication throughout the alpha and beta states right after reveal, and then we just see radio silence for months on end. Once again, look at Infinity Ward for that one, but fingers crossed. One can hope, right? And then finally, the genuine upkeep of the game. And I mean this in the sense of, like, yes, we do get updates every month or so. I still think that we should get more because there's a lot of mainline problems that do persist. And when I say that, I mean things like the UAVs have still been bugged since Season 4. Gameplay tips in your settings and those sort of HUD elements, they turn on every single time you open up Warzone. And if you try to turn them off, it will break your controller input on PC at least 50% of the time. Those gameplay tips have been turning on by themselves almost for an entire seasonal cycle by now. Next week with Season 4 Reloaded, it will be an entire season since that has been a problem and not fixed. Infills in Warzone drop you straight down. Stats don't track properly. Hardcore and private matches still has a HUD on it, which I'm pretty sure is something that has been there in private matches since it was introduced to remove Tier 1 back in like Season 2 Reloaded or something like that. These things have persisted since pre-Season 4 and in some cases for way more months than that. And we can't seem to have any of these big problems fixed. I might get in trouble for this one, but I remember in pre-season 1 or pre-season 2 in the dev call, I forget what it was, but there was a long-standing bug that was completely game-altering and breaking in some cases. Someone asked a developer, and I don't want to name names, they asked them if there was a fix coming here for that, and they were like, I don't know that we've seen any reports on that, in a genuine nature. I thought at first they were trolling because that was such a big issue, but we still didn't have a fix that coming update, or I think even the one after that. Like, they truly did not know about a game-breaking bug. I just want the devs to be aware of what's going on because this year there's been so many things that just make it seem like they're not. It's a real big bummer that we can take a look at like seasonal updates for either the launch or the mid-season, and if a new issue is introduced, we can kind of immediately write off the fact that we'll see any sort of fix to that until a month later. We basically have a problem that will persist for at least a month minimum. That shouldn't be happening with a AAA studio. So my fingers crossed that hopefully that kind of stuff is fixed out. But to me, that is some of the big stuff here that Modern Warfare 3 has to clean up. And again, for a lot of people, it still may not be enough. I know that I personally have felt really burned by this past year. I personally like a lot of what Sledge has done in the past. Sure, they haven't quite made bangers, but they've at least attempted, in my opinion. So there is this sliver of positivity and hopefulness that, yes, maybe we can see some of this cleaned up. But again, it is a tall task ahead. So that is what we're going to call it, and we'll turn it over to you. So let me know your thoughts down below. Is there anything you would like to add to this list? Anything that you think maybe you were a little too critical of? What are the case? Drop your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, X-Defiant, other FPS content, and even some other cool stuff here upcoming as well that we're going to hopefully throw up on the channel. Love to have you in the community, but for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.